So welcome to the PCA Craftsmanship Forum Tools and Products Series. I'm your host, Don Easton. And today's meeting is Craft Masters Speak. We're a collection of like-minded individuals who come together as a forum in friendship, respect, and humility to share knowledge, skill sets, and passion in all that we do. As craftsmen, we practice the art of simplifying the process with skill and artistry to create beauty. Pretty much that's my definition. So we have some questions and everybody gets the answer. Just keep in mind that everybody wants to answer them. And so our previous Tools and Products Committee meetings, our first one was unique tools, and everybody brought in their that special unique that nobody else has. And then we've had Sally Zimmerman, who was a historic color expert, EGL, Q-Tech, and Fitty's Finishes. We've had Durafix, 3M, Kremlin Spray Systems, and Sure Tape, and many more. And so today it's an interview. It's an interview with craftsmen, part of the Craftsmanship Forum that's associated with the PCA. So on there we have Charlie Gilly, and he is in Connecticut.
Vermont.
Where's that?
Vermont.
You're in Vermont. I said Connecticut. Yeah, you're in Vermont. Geez, right off the bat. Steve Addix is in Phoenix. Chris Sawyer's in Portland. And Rodney Pags, are you like near Chicago?
Yeah, Woodstock, Illinois. Not to be confused with Woodstock, Vermont.
You guys have a connection.
Yeah.
And I'm Don Easton, and I'm in California near Sacramento. And so the first question, obviously, is to Charlie.
Yep.
We'll start you off. When did you realize you were a craftsman? You've been doing this for a bit. When did you realize it, and how did it change you?
Well, the way it worked out with me, this is a long-winded answer, but I'll make it short as possible. I started painting in high school and college, and then it was just a job. And I really didn't want any part of it when I came to Vermont. But unfortunately, in the early 70s, there wasn't a lot to do here. So I got back into it. But in order to make the profession of interest to me, I just dove right into it. I started out working like most people by themselves, and then brought on a few people. But I started seeking out as much knowledge as I possibly could. I took restoration courses through historic New England, which at the time was Spania. There was a place in New York that I learned to plaster, decorative painting. I took decorative painting courses up and down the East Coast. Went to wallpaper school. So when I really dove into it and wanted to educate myself to the trade, that just ignited a passion to really go after it. And I was fortunate to work on some pretty impressive structures. And what it's done is there's never been a day that I really even, and I used to burn off a lot of paint, stripping stuff, with heat. Once it was over, once the day was over, I was fine. But it's the rewards you get from doing it that really excited me. So there's not a day I don't enjoy going to work. And even now, the same thing. Most of my work is papering, but I still look forward to getting up every day, going to work, solving problems, and creating things that I can stand back and look at and people like.
So how many years would you say? And you still love what you do?
I would give myself about 56 years in the trade.
So, and you still love what you do?
I do. I'm glad that I'm healthy enough that I can continue doing it and still go out there. Like I said, most of what I'm doing now is hanging paper, which I enjoy immensely, and it throws just another variable in the mix. We still do spraying in the shop and that restoring windows. I don't go out and paint anymore outside of the shop work.
Well, so Steve, tell us about how, your approach. I mean, you were a school teacher.
Yeah,
and then you became a painting contractor. So how did it happen for you with the craftsmanship world? And I know there's a big change in your life from being a teacher to now being a painter, but how did that happen?
I've thought about it looking way back when, they always talk about finding that passion. And, like you say, if you are doing your passion, like Charlie said, you never work a day in your life. Kind of like a craftsman. If you're passionate about it, you can't tell if we're working or playing because we enjoy it so much. It's just like backing way up, and I'm just kind of soul searching because I've only been in it 24 years, taught for 11. But when I go way back, education, because my parents were educators. I like movement. I was an avid runner. I trained on my own, but my downfall, well, it's not a downfall. It's just my spelling wasn't the best. My memorizing, went to a Christian day school. Memorizing was really hard for me. I mean, I went through school. I just worked harder than other people. And all through high school, I think about this because prepping is about, like Charlie said, you know what it's going to look like when you're done. But all through high school, since my parents were in education, I stripped and waxed floors. I cleaned bathrooms. I mopped, scraped gum off, went into the military for a few years, and that fell right in line with the inspection orders. Working on aircraft with, your SLPs, we call them something else, technical data. I was teaching after 11 years, dealing with 500 students in coaching. I also realized I love fundamentals. But one thing with fundamentals, and even when I was coaching, I wouldn't get upset if our team lost as long as we all had our individual goals and everybody improved. And so I didn't really have this. I have the ability to bring a great attitude and have fun, and I don't get upset or mad when things go wrong. And I kind of move forward, and that's something as a craftsman. There's always something going wrong, and you're trying to alleviate that problem ahead of time. Or even when you're working on something, you're looking what someone else has already done, and you're going, they didn't do this right. They didn't even prime anything, and I'm just having to start over and restore and do it right. So part of my, so I was teaching, and I was getting a little burnt out, and I took a year off. And what I was trustees of property of a church, and I was on the school board. And my neighbor was a painter, and he got into it, and all he did was have employee problems. So I would help him go fix what they did wrong. And so I started learning drywall. Oil was still out there. We were doing cabinets. So I was doing it on the weekends. And I was getting a little tired of field days with 500 kids in the heat in Arizona. And my daughter wanted to do gymnastics. So, hey, I'm going to take a year off. And I told a few people I was starting to paint, and I never turned it just grew.
So it became a way of life for you.
A way of life, and it gave me the flexibility. And I don't remember how I found the PCA. I do remember in the fact that I started researching and reading in the library about products. And back there was still oil on the market at the time here in the valley. And so I got the tail end of that. And
I like your story. I totally love your story. How about you, Rodney? When did you figure it out?
So,
because you were a musician. Are you still a musician?
I'm still a musician. Yeah. So I grew up in a family of painters. Both of my older brothers were painters, and I grew up in the field. And I remember being a young kid and painting, and I remember my uncle always stepping anytime we painted. My parents owned apartment buildings. My dad was a janitor, so we would rehab apartments quite a bit. My brother did a lot of that work too. And I did it all throughout high school, and then I dived in a lot more in college. I did a lot more work in the summers when I was in college, and I was studying to be a music teacher. I was studying education. So I remember the very first job that I had as a band director. I took all my painting tools and I forsake them all, and I gave them to one of the teachers in the school that I was teaching at. I said, "You can have these. I am never going to paint again." And that was in 20 no, pardon me, that was 94 when I told him that. And so fast forward, the recession happened, and the housing market was just going crazy, and my brother was looking for painters. He was the superintendent of a large painting company in Illinois. And I said, you know what? I was still painting on the side. This was like in 2003, 2004. And I took the jump and I left teaching and I painted full time. So I've been painting full time since 2004. And I didn't know what a craftsman was. I just thought there were painters. I didn't know anything about craftsmanship until I joined PDCA back then and the Craftsmanship Forum. It opened my eyes to what craftsmanship is. And in 2013, I did a talk at the joint session we had with the Residential Forum and the Craftsmanship Forum. And I spoke about craftsmanship because I was so intrigued by it. And so I would say that your original question was how did you discover?
Oh, you know what? You went on it. You did it. Yeah, I mean, you joined. You did set. You spoke about it. You had the passion for it. But when did you start like believing it?
I didn't start believing it until fairly recently, like within the last 10 years of my practice. That's when I believed that I was a craftsman, but even more so in the past 5 years. I've dived into being a craftsman, and I see it as a way of being, and it's an approach to how, not just how I pick up a paintbrush and paint a room or paint a door, but it's about my life and how I'm being. So I'm passionate about craftsmanship, and it's something that I love. It's not just about being focused and thorough on something, but it's something deeper than that.
I like that. I can feel it. So Chris Sawyer, you're in Oregon, Portland.
Yes.
So the question comes to you, and I'm going to add to it.
Okay.
So, when you realized you were a craftsman,
Mhm.
how it changed you, and then I want your definition of it, of a craftsman.
Okay. Well, I would say brief background. I'm about 34 years in the industry and grew up with a grandfather who was a painter. My dad was in the industry on the production side and worked for a manufacturer. So I was pulling drops when I was, about 8 years old with grandpa in the summer and riding in a paint van as a sales rep with my dad. So really exposed to it from a very, very young age, and to high school, went for a summer job to work for a guy that was a local painter, and he went way back, kind of similar background. So really a lot of those old roots coming out, and I didn't intend to be a painter at the time, but worked for him all through college and about 10 years. And what I think in terms of when I started to realize that I may be a craftsman, is somewhere around the maybe 7 to 10 year mark, because I feel like there's kind of a period where you move from not knowing anything to kind of getting competent, and then you become just a competent painter somewhere in there. I was running a few guys and, kind of thought I really knew everything. And somewhere around that 7 to 10 year mark, started to realize, oh, there's maybe a lot more that I don't know. And I think that was a turning point for transitioning from being just a painter to a craftsman was the recognition that going from assuming you know everything in the trade to realizing there's really an unending amount of things that you can learn. And so kind of accepting that and moving forward in my career, I think was the transition to really craftsmanship. In terms of my definition, I think that really it comes down to the thoughtfulness and an approach. At this point, I'm out of the field. I've been out of the field. I've been here at Sunderleaf Painting, working for Sam for 12 years. And some of that has been in sales, but a lot of it's been in production and working with the guys. And what I love about it is it's given me a chance to pass down some of that knowledge that while I was working in a small situation with a couple of people, you're sharing with some people, but we're a little bit bigger company and able to have 20 employees to brainstorm, get all of their information, all of the knowledge they have and share, and then pass down the things that we know. And I think the definition really just comes down to your approach to your work, that you're thoughtful, you care about the buildings, the structures you're working on. Our best clients are the ones that refer to themselves not as homeowners, but as caretakers of a home. And I view us as that as well. We're preserving something that's been here before us and will be here after us.
That's cool. So I'm going to ask you, Charlie, then Steve, then Rodney, to give me 2 sentences that you, in your definition of a craftsman, in 2 sentences. Just 2.
Just 2. I think my overall definition would be someone who is fully committed to their trade. And because of that, they are constantly seeking knowledge to improve and always working toward that goal of being better.
I like that. Steve, 2 sentences.
2 sentences. Well, the first one is really pretty simple. It's like to do no harm.
Okay.
To, and that goes even
No,
product.
yeah, do no harm.
Do no harm. And a craftsman is so involved in being able to single task one step of the process to a point where the next step will be successful, and the step after that is successful, and the end result is a product that some people can't even produce.
I like that. Okay, Rodney, you've had the most time to think about this, so there you go.
So I just pulled up my talk. Here are the 10 traits, that I came up with. Exactly what Charlie and Steve were talking about, in a sense. Being educable, realizing that you never arrive. Being creative, look at problems as opportunities to create new solutions. Having foresight and vision, knowing where you're going. Being thorough, always looking back at your work. Having integrity in your work. That's when you do things when nobody's looking. Being mindful and concentrating. Experimental, being willing to try new products. Practice. The only way to get good at something is to practice continually. Being confident. Confidence is a result of your practice, and also being committed. Committed is something that shows up as it's the result of you continually working. I think that may have been more than 2 sentences, Don.
No, but you said a lot of good stuff in there, Rodney.
Okay, good.
So then,
Very good.
we pretty much dialed in, all the core values and principles that guide our work. I mean, you guys have always said that and your stories of how you became craftsmen, Charlie with all the education and going to these classes and learning and learning and learning. And Steve is like your resiliency and your perseverance and your step-by-step process, and just from one job to the next, it stayed the same. And so, and then at the same time, everybody's talked about, well, for the most part, your health. You stay physically fit and you're creative. So if you want to if anybody wants to add more to what are some principles, what are some values that might guide your work differently than what was just said, if you want to pipe in, that's to add to it.
One thing I say to clients, Don, is this is my qualifier when we take on a project. And I say we because of the crews in the past, but I always said to people, we will do the best job we can do given all the limitations. They can either be time, condition, budget, but they had better not be skill. And that's the end of the story.
All right. I like that. So
Can I ask Charlie a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you say it better not be skill, then that's on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Team.
Exactly. And that's where I put it. That's what I want them to know, is that if I don't know how to do something, before I embark on it, I'm going to do the research to produce the results that I want and they want. And the other thing is, we would do big $1 million houses, and I don't ever want to see a punch list.
no.
I want to walk in that house and make sure that every single thing that I see is fixed, so that someone then has to tell me what to do.
Yeah. If I'm happy, they're happy.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Your own worst critic.
Oh, tell me about it. So who or what, Chris, I'll take this to you first. Who or what has had the most significant influence on your work?
I would say who would be probably, I'd go back to my grandfather and the time I spent painting with him. Little story on that. I got to a point where was beginning to get competent. At least I thought. Maybe, looking back, I wasn't, but I felt so. And he made me switch to my left hand.
Yes.
And he only let me work with my left hand for about a month. And it made me so mad, because at the time I just thought I can go faster with my right hand. Why is he making me do this? At the end of the month, he told me that someday you're going to be in a position where you can't reach it with your right. You're going to have to be able to use your left hand, and you should be able to do it with either hand, the same quality level. And I didn't believe him at the time. I was probably 14, 15, and didn't believe him. But there was a time later on, after he was gone, that I was on a ladder, couldn't reach something, and had to reach out and cut in with my left hand, and realized, he had taught me that. And so there are a lot of little lessons like that I carry forward. The other one that he taught me was the most valuable thing you can bring as a new painter, new craftsman, is the ability to anticipate what somebody you're learning from will need next. And so that's always been something I've tried to instill in people I talk to, and what I do now, to think about when you're assisting somebody, what do they need next? So things like that apply across a lot of different things come from him.
Yeah, my left hand was tied behind my back when I first started.
Yep.
And it's okay, you got to practice left-handed, and it helps so much to be ambidextrous. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So Rodney, I think you want to answer that, don't you?
Oh, who was the greatest influence?
Yeah.
Well, definitely my oldest brother, Ray. He is the one that he taught me a lot. So I had my brother Ray, my brother Bobby, who's deceased, and then I have a cousin, Richie, who my brother Ray and Richie had a business together. They did drywall and painting, drywall taping, hanging, and painting. And I learned a lot from all of them, all three of them. My brother Ray, I was literally thrown into the fire. That's how I learned. He would give me a job to do. I was like the serviceman for his business. He had a side business, and I learned how to tape. I learned how to hang drywall. I learned how to paint. I had to do it on my own, but then he would come and evaluate and check it out, and then we would fix and make adjustments on it. So definitely my brother Ray was the biggest influence.
I like that.
My,
How about you, Charlie? Oh, you got more, Dad? Go.
I
Dad,
just
yeah.
want to say my cousin Richie, he was the one that taught me hustle. You never walk from point A to point B.
Yeah.
You hustle from point A to point B carefully, not to hurt yourself or anything, but he's the one that taught me a very strong work ethic.
Yeah. I learned that from my brothers, my sister, my mom and dad as well.
Mm.
Yeah. And all the, yeah, 100%. More so than coaches and teachers. It was the family. How about you, Charlie?
I'm going to go back to my mom.
There you go.
She's still alive, 94. And to this day, I tell her, you are responsible for giving me my moral compass. And it's from that you knew you produced the best you could. You treated people with respect and kindness until they show they don't deserve it.
Yep.
And it was those things that, by having those values, it pushes you to be a better person. And that's what helps out.
My mom wanted me to be an individual, and I think I achieved being an individual. So, how about you, Steve?
Oh, I like the word hustle. That was when I taught PE, that was part of one of our rules. Hustle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, and it was time management.
So do you have like a significant person?
Oh, yeah. I would say my neighbor, Pete, who got into painting in a roundabout way. He had to take some leave from work because of a death of his family, actually his daughter, and he was my next door neighbor. And I was teaching at the time, and we'd go talk, and we started talking about painting. That's when I started reading about it. So he actually gave me that building the confidence, because that's what it's all about, is building confidence in a person. So working with him, and then also looking at what not to do when it comes to, because he was running people and trying to grow the business, and his first time as a contractor getting out of the business world, and he thought all contractors lie, because he would lie about his schedule, he'd lie about to his people, and I'm going, I just never had that approach. I mean, I still to this day, I tell them exactly where my jobs are, and like I think 21 years, I didn't miss a day. So he was the first one that gave me that confidence to go in and start things on my own.
See, I remember talking to Mario Gerton 2001 or 2002. He gave me a call. I didn't know him, and he was asking about joining, and we had other things going on at the time. And I remember the conversation with him, and I was blown away how knowledgeable he was. There was all these things he was talking about. I was like, yeah, I know those things. And then I went, whoa, I don't know that. And it just fed my curiosity so much more. Like, he was the first person that used the word craftsman. And it was like, it just like, oh, wow. Because we were doing a lot of Victorians and such. And so but Mario, there's been so many. I couldn't pinpoint one, but there've been so many. So then we've got a double question here. It's like, black wolf, white wolf. So it's like the stressors in your day and the joys in your day. And well, then we're going to be a trifecta here. And your coping mechanisms. How do you cope with what stresses you out on the job? And then how do you deal with it? I mean, do you have a certain coping mechanism? Pilates, yoga, climb a tree, climb a mountain? What is it? Rodney, you seem excited about this. So what stresses you out? What's the stressor in your day, and how do you cope with it?
So for me, one of the biggest stressors is it's a strength and a weakness. I enjoy taking on challenges or projects that I've never done before. That's something I get excited about. Whether it's a new technique or a new product, or the substrate is different. Like for example, I had an exterior project with T111 siding. If you know what that, it's like the paneling that looks like the board and battens. It's got the grooves in it. And going into it, I knew that I was going to have to sand it and then do some repair. And so I was like, all right, which primer am I going to use? Am I going to use an elastomeric primer? Am I going to use an oil primer? Am I going to use a regular acrylic primer? So like all these, those are some of the stressors I go through. And what I do to cope with those is I take one step at a time, and I don't necessarily overthink things. And what I do is practice yoga and stretching. And that's something that at the end of the day, or at the beginning of my morning, beginning of my day, it helps me to focus and concentrate. So I can figure out what primer to use on a
breathing
particular
exercise. Yes. So your joys in the day, that would be figuring things out. You got the challenge. Are there more joys in your day? I mean, what else will give you joy? Talking to a customer?
The biggest joy for me is seeing a client smile. Like, for example, I'm working in a very large dining room, and they're making a dramatic color change from a deep dark green colors on the walls and a very dark ceiling color. And I already primed it and put the first coat on. And I just said to her, this is so amazing. You're just going to love this. And she came in the room and she lit up. She's like, oh yeah, I can see it. And so that's what brings me joy is
I like that.
I bring immense color and joy into people's spaces. The joy comes from sharing my knowledge, my experience, my expertise in making transformation for my clients.
That's beautiful. So Chris, you have two different versions here.
Okay.
When you're out in the field painting, what was your stressor? Compare that to in the office. What is your stressor? And then have those, how do you deal with, how do you cope with that? Is there a different coping mechanism now and then?
Okay. Yeah. I think in the field, to me, what I always stressed the most on was schedule and maintaining the quality that we need to have the final product be what it needs to be. So I spent a lot of time in the field working backwards in my mind from, we've told this customer we're going to be done on Friday afternoon, so they have their house for the weekend. So backwards in my mind, going back to Monday morning, all the steps that need to happen, all the products, this will have a dry time of this long. How do we plan that and make it through? So that was, I think, my main field stressor always. I didn't get a lot of stress from the process, or even when you'd have an issue or something to resolve. To me, that was kind of the fun part of it. It was more meeting expectation for timeline was always my biggest one. And maybe says something about me, but that probably translates to the office as well. And when you lose some of that control on your own, to be able to manage some of the time, managing people and making sure we hit those expectations has kind of translated into my main real stressor in the office is schedule, and maintaining the quality that we need to, and budget and schedule all at the same time.
So how do you cope with the stress?
In the field, I probably didn't do it well and took too much of it home. I've personally been meditating for a little while now, and the last few years, I've found a lot of peace with that, and just understanding there's things that you can control, things you can't, and just accepting where you are and what you're going through.
I like that. So Charlie, I know that you know, volunteer fireman, skier. So what was the stress for you, or what is the stress for you? And
Well,
being outdoors, is that your way of not getting burned out?
I, like Chris, was always under scheduling gun, deadlines, and worrying about the cost. When you try and put your work at the top level, it takes a little longer, and it's hard sometimes to justify that to people. So yeah, my coping mechanism early on, um, scheduling, deadlines, and employees. My way of compensating was I used to race bicycles. I raced Nordic skiing, and I would work out my frustrations that way. Now I tell people I'm semi-retired. I work the same amount of hours, but I don't put myself under the gun. And like I said before, mostly it's wallpaper, which I have to say pays a whole lot better than painting. And I can control it a lot better. And it's a whole lot easier for me to estimate. And when I'm looking at wallpapers that cost $300-400 a yard, I make damn sure I don't rush into something. It takes me what it takes me to do it. And if you don't want it now, I don't care anymore. So I like Rodney. I get up every morning. I spend about an hour. I go down on the concept tube and row for a while, and then I'll come up, I'll stretch, exercise. I do my own Pilates routine. Once a week, I have a Pilates class. And then I just bike and ski for my own enjoyment. I do work 2 days a week at the local touring center, giving lessons and on equipment still. But I'm at the best point I've ever been.
I like that.
So hope we can enjoy it.
Steve, how about you? What stresses you out? How do you deal with it?
I think stress is a choice. You don't have to be stressed.
Well, you don't have to be, but what stresses you? Or do you just not stress at all?
I don't really stress too much. I mean, I probably stress in my dreams probably more.
Wow.
Because it's the craziest thing. I'm dreaming about my locker room, and you got junior high kids. I mean, they go back to those days when seventh graders couldn't even walk. 30 guys couldn't walk in a door without pushing or being stupid.
We can dream analyze you here.
So yeah,
you're regressing.
I'm like Charlie at this point, basically, because it's like, well, this week I'm painting for a gal. 2 years ago, we did her kitchen island in her kitchen cabinets. Then she had wallpaper going up in 2 of her bathrooms. They were being remodeled. I came and repaired all the walls that that needed drywall work when she decided they weren't going to put wallpaper up in the cabinets, and it all went in, and the walls weren't really leveled off. But now I'm going back. So I'm going back and I'm painting right now, actually, her hall bathroom.
So you don't have stress.
Not so much. I've learned to let it go. I mean, I used to be I couldn't relax unless everything was in order.
Okay.
And maybe more so when you're teaching because the painting is the stress relief.
Okay. So you're
when I go to work, or I walk the dog in the morning.
So you're just a happy camper, period. You're chill, you're relaxed, and everything just is. You're in nonstop flow state.
Basically, most of the time,
Yeah.
I'm looking for a laugh.
All right. So I've got 2 more questions, and we have about 10 minutes left. So, Chris, and just some words. No stories, just words here. Adjectives. So how do customers and employees and partners and your children, what words would they describe you? What do people say about you?
Thoughtful, efficient, honest.
I like that. Rodney. Words.
Funny, sincere, engaging, consistent.
I like that. So all these are, yeah, okay. Charlie, words. What?
Well,
What?
I prefer to describe myself.
Okay.
And I tell people right off the bat that I'm an RA. And the response I get, whoa, what is that? I said, it's a recovering asshole. And so I keep that on the forefront of my mind, and I'm always trying to do better because it's easy to fall off the wagon. But I think most people would say, I never turned down a request from another contractor to help them out question wise, product wise, or how to do things. Just like when I get calls from anybody. And so that, and I think I could have been more thoughtful to employees, but nobody hated me. So
You're
this was
just a
okay.
generous man.
No, I don't want people to go through the same headache that I
Right.
go through.
Yeah.
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 And like I said earlier, everyone deserves respect and kindness until they prove they don't.
Exactly. Steve, words.
Yeah, I'm kind, thoughtful, love serving, impeccable with my words. Don't let bad thoughts come out, even though they may be in the brain and you're thinking them. I don't let them come out or let them affect me. I'm detail oriented, goal, set goals.
So we're Boy Scouts. No group. I mean, described. It's like, it's like an Eagle Scout. It's like it's yeah. Okay, so this is I listen to podcasts and I hear this every once in a while, and I'm always interested in this. So what inspires you about anything? It doesn't matter. It could be a piece of art. It could be music. What would you tell a younger version of yourself? So what's that inspiration? I mean, I'm not talking, okay, I'm inspired by this paint. I don't care about that. Like, what's that thing that you think about that? I always look up to my dad. And I always see him as like a hero to me. And then that's an inspiration. So something like that, and sort of deeper. And then what would you tell a younger version of you? Anyone who, when you get it?
Oh, I have one. I enjoy now, especially because I'm also supervising in the food industry, out at the stadium of Craft Culinary, and I supervise and set up the attendance for success. And I guess I probably witnessed it too, when I was coaching, and it just moves my heart when I see others caring for others unselfishly as a whole group, and there's no drama and everybody's just working as a machine. So I've never worked in a professional big company, but I hear the stuff that goes on, and that's one of the hardest things to do is get a whole organization on the same page and everybody caring about each other and the main mission statement or the goal.
So then what would you tell a younger version of yourself?
That was okay when I was younger, and I was never one to get in fights, and I didn't think of myself as as a strong male, because I wasn't a bully or a loudmouth or big enough to play football. So I was kind of just in the background observing.
So just to tell you, a younger self, that it's okay.
It's okay.
How about you, Chris?
It's helped a bit on it. I guess the thing that inspires me a bit is to continue to learn. I feel like there's a period of time where you get into life where you're kind of doing the grind and you're not paying attention to, or you can go that way and not pay attention to continue to learn, be open to things. And I'm back at a point where feeling curious about the world and things like travel a little bit more, new people, different ideas, just being more open to those. And I think I'd tell younger me to get ahead of that earlier and get different perspectives, because at this point that's talking to anybody anywhere and hearing their story is really what's interesting to me. And there's just so many different perspectives, ways people have lived, experiences they've had, and I just love to hear them.
I like that. How about you, Rodney? What sort of like, what sparks your interest? What inspires you? And what would you tell somebody? What would you tell yourself way back when?
So what I would tell myself is just enjoy the ride, to go for it, to be fearless. Although, when I think about this question, I think about everything that I've gone through in life. It kind of helped. It creates where I am now. And so I don't know necessarily that I would want to avoid anything that I've gone through, even the painful stuff. But I realize that it's, I would tell myself, just go for it. Don't be afraid.
Okay.
And what was the other part is what
inspires you?
I have to admit, my son, he's going to be 24 in a couple weeks. He truly inspires me on what he's accomplished. So he just recently graduated from the Air Force Academy. He played football for 3 years. He was the captain of the football team. He was MVP of the offense. Whatever he touches turns to gold. It seems like he's quite an exceptional, and he's an exceptional, successful person, and he wants nothing to do with painting for now.
How about you, Charlie? So
Well, I have to agree with Rodney 100%, and I tell people this all the time, that what we've experienced in life are the ingredients that make us what we are right now. Better or worse. The nice thing is time is probably the biggest distorter of truth, because what seemed like a horrific event softens with time. The edges are not as sharp anymore. But it goes to making us what we are. And as you age, to me, the goal is to be a better person. So you're utilizing all those experiences you have to move in that direction. Unfortunately for younger people, a lot of, and I feel the same for myself, was that you don't have the confidence. Sometimes you need to be a little more confident in yourself with decisions. And it's easier to be fair with everyone else but yourself. So you're always, I'm going to beat myself up because that wasn't right. Well, take a second look at it. And I too, I am blessed with a son who has done a great deal for society, and I'm proud of it. And so.
Yes. So, this is, you're wrapping it up. It's, I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Chris Sawyer, Rodney Paggs, Steve Addix, Charlie Gilly for joining in the PCA Craftsmanship Forum Tools and Products Series, Craft Masters Speak. Thank you